Not long before we went into lockdown, Christine and I were coming back from a trip up the Rangitata Valley. We had a couple of German guys that we'd found up at the end of the road who needed a ride back towards Geraldine. We then came across that quintessential rural New Zealand scene. A large flock of sheep being driven towards us up the road. Dogs on both sides of the road running up and down with the shepherd at the back. Whistle in his mouth, swearing up a storm. No problem. We pulled over to wait. It has always seemed to me to be one of those well-rehearsed things of beauty when it all goes well. On this occasion, the main mob arrived at the gate just in front of us. The heading dogs did their thing and the leaders turned in just at the right time. Voila! And then the tail enders came up to the gate. All of a sudden, one recalcitrant young ram decided to make a run for it and took a clutch of young lasses with him. Chaos! Dogs were eagerly dispatched. Order was restored and the gates were eventually closed with all the sheep on the inside. But it's events like this that reveal just how different a first century Jewish experience of life as a shepherd is from our own. Shepherds in Jesus' day looked after flocks of about 100 or so, but they often knew each sheep by name, and the sheep knew the shepherd's voice. Shepherds walked ahead, calling the sheep after them rather than driving them on from the rear. I'm told they still do. Not all of them owned a sheepfold. Instead, they shared access to these protective walled enclosures that we hear about in this passage today. Sheep of different flocks would share space for the night, and shepherds would share the protective duty. John doesn't have many parables in his gospel, and this is about as close as he gets. But he does draw attention to special bits of his narrative, often with the words, "Very truly I tell you." So we should pay attention here. There's more to this text than meets the eye. Nighttime, or any period of darkness or wilderness, is often a metaphor in Scripture for a period of uncertainty and trouble. It's interesting too that the Greek word for the use of for the word sheepfold in this story is the same word used to describe the courtyard outside the priest's house on the night of Jesus' arrest, the one in which Peter betrayed Jesus while standing around the fire. I wonder who was being protected by the shepherd on that night. The context in which John's gospel was written too is important as well. This is a particularly turbulent period of Jewish history that eventually resulted in the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in about the year 70. This turbulence reached every level of society. They weren't just angry with the occupying Romans. There were bitter divisions on many differences. In chapter 7, the crowd were arguing amongst themselves, trying to decide whether Jesus was from God or not. What they saw with their eyes didn't tally with their understanding of Scripture. Just before today's piece, in chapter 9, the Pharisees too are disagreeing with one another when they're judging the man born blind whom Jesus had healed on the Sabbath. You might remember a few weeks ago that we pointed out the irony in this particular story. The blind man became sighted through faith, and the religious leaders who kept their physical sight couldn't see the truth right in front of them. On more than one occasion, John makes a direct link between physical sight and belief on one hand, and faith on the other. He points out the problems of seeing with your eyes, but not with your heart. Who then is Jesus referring to when he talks about the thieves and the bandits in the early part of our reading today. What is the shepherd stationed at the gate there to do? Well, thieves and bandits that the shepherd protects the sheep from aren't wolves or lions who are merely following their base instincts looking for a meal. Thieves and bandits in this story are those who willfully take advantage of their fellows, preying on insecurities and confusion from within. The sheep, with the shepherd at the gate, in this story are protected from confusion and uncertainty by faith in the wall and in the shepherd. They live in safety only according to the word and the song of the shepherd. The gate in verse 7 is also part of this protective barrier, keeping in those who might wander off by mistake in the midst of this confusion. Come the light and truth of the dawn in the morning, the shepherd summons his flock once again to breach the gate and wander the hills in the safety of daylight, to feed and to grow, to stand strong and sure in the confidence of the shepherd's love. Think of Moses and the people of Israel wandering around in the wilderness for 40 years. The real problem for the Israelites wasn't a lack of provision. They had water and bread and meat sufficient for each day, and twice as much on the day before the Sabbath. And their clothes and shoes didn't wear out. What they struggled with was staying true to the covenant and trusting the Lord their God. What they struggled with was their desire and their willingness to live in faith. The Lord their God provided a safe and secure covenant in the form of the law, but the people failed to live up to their side of the bargain. And for us, Jesus is this new Moses. But our protection isn't a covenant, a fixed and firm law that prescribes our every move. But it's a living relationship tailor-made for our circumstances and our daily needs. What Moses did for the people of Israel in the wilderness, Jesus does for us today by encouraging us to live abundantly and to the full in him. The Jews struggled with the discrepancy between what they could see and what they couldn't understand or accept on faith. Their religious leaders, entrusted with the protection and judgment of the people, were just as much in the dark as everybody else. They could see signs of God and what Jesus was doing, but they couldn't get their human minds around how it all fitted together. They struggled with what they saw as an inconsistency in Jesus' approach, preparing the faithful for the trials and tribulations ahead, but as a servant, as a shepherd who serves his flock. We too wrestle with these issues. We all struggle to live at times in faith. And we all struggle to act on the truth and beauty and goodness that exists in every moment. And we therefore miss opportunities to live into the glory and the grace of God's kingdom every day. If we can, however, surrender to his call and live in him the way he calls us to, he will help us identify those thieves and bandits hidden among us. He will protect us from ourselves and help us grow our vision, allowing us to live in peace to his glory and grace, even in the midst of level 3, with level 2 possibly still weeks away. Amen.